All right, it looks like we're live again with another episode of the Manny Wolf Show. Today I've got with me for part 2, Mr. Cody Jefferson. What's happening, bro?
Man, just living the dream.
Right on, man. Well, now you mark the first person I've actually had a second chat with. Reason being, we were just really getting into some good stuff. It just was a really wonderful conversation. And I like that even though we both have our sort of professional personas and what we do, that's really not what we were talking about. You know, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, we were covering everything from spirituality to the BLM movement to
Yeah. So that is always nice for me. I always like when we can get past the, so how'd you grow your business? What's your backstory?
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Let us see your hero's journey and
Yeah.
key takeaways on how to grow our business in 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, if somehow you find this one but didn't catch the first episode, go back and listen to the first episode first. Even though these aren't going to be sort of sequential, you still don't want to walk halfway into a conversation and be like, "Hey guys, what's going on?"
Yeah.
You don't want to be that guy or girl. So it's funny because in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it's been, a lot has changed and yet everything's the same.
Right.
You know what I mean? We still got like massive division around and politicization around the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Which I'd love to get your take on that. And I want to share with you first a little bit about my own inner process.
Sure.
One of the things for me that's been interesting is seeing my biases come up.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think of myself as somehow, better than that and above that. And I mean, I maybe I am in the sense that I hold back, but bro, my biases are just like, I just want to like almost like lash out at people who don't agree with me. And I'm like, Manny, what the hell, man? Can you dig that? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. It's cognitive dissonance is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And we're smack in the middle of this weird like dynamic where all of these different paradigms are like hitting full steam and all colliding with one another. And so it's this really crazy train wreck and everybody loves to watch a train wreck.
Yeah, man.
And so
totally.
chunking napalm into the fire.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to see. I mean, you've got everything from far right to far left to this like Q state and deep state and pizza. Like all of these different narratives that are coming into play.
Yeah. And
the idea of COVID being, this pandemic. Well, now are they getting rid of the phrase and the terminology of pandemic and epidemic because it has such a low death rate, right? And there were some things that were misappropriated in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
The whole dying with COVID versus dying,
So you're tracking that bit too. Okay, good. Yeah.
So you're seeing like a spike, absolutely, as we start to reopen the country and as more people are testing, right? Yeah. But the death rate is just going the opposite direction. And so now you got mainstream media saying that that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do with anything that they've spun this whole time. And like that the president said would be good, that no, they're not good. Well, now they are good.
Mm-hmm.
And a mess. For the media, it's a mess. And for people, again, you've got this cognitive dissonance. You've got this way in which your worldview is informed and you want to
protect that, right?
You got to protect the camp.
Yeah.
It's like spirituality, right? Like if truth is a stream, right? And it's ever flowing.
Yeah.
Especially in these types of conversations or in conversations of spirituality, you got the camp that camps out right here. And it's the small church you were raised in. It's where you've always been and it's where your whole family is. But if you want to taste water from a different place in the stream, like you're going to have to go against everything in here. And there's a lot of dissonance to that. There's a lot of no, it can't be that way because I've always been taught it's this way.
Right.
And when
Right.
you see something in the media for so long, it becomes so normalized that that becomes the bias.
Yeah.
So now when we have dissonance or we have pushback against that bias,
Yeah.
again, what do we do when we feel threatened? We feel that we need to prove, protect, or hide.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is a lot of people trying to prove things, trying to protect things, trying to hide things. And
Yeah.
Richard Rohr that said true contentment, whether in spirituality or in political ideologies or anything else, that true contentment is when there is no need, there's no felt need to prove, protect, or hide.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's something that will be explored in layers, just like emotion, right? Because I really felt that I was at a place of that. And then this COVID situation rolled over everybody. And I will share that in the beginning, I was scared, fearful, and cautious.
Sure.
I was. And I was like, hey, I live in California. Our governor is Gavin Newsom. He came on the scene, like tall and handsome and confident. And I was like, okay, he's got this under control.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's bipartisan cooperation. He's working with Trump, who is like his enemy. And after about 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it was, now I know that if you're on a different side of this issue than me out there in listener and viewer land, I expect that you're going to have your sort of on deck preloaded defensive answers to this. And that's cool, whatever. I'm just telling you my truth. I'm a critical thinker, and I know critical thinkers who have arrived at different viewpoints than me, and I respect that. So I think that's where you really get your sort of critical thinker's junior achievement badge, is when you can respect the fact that somebody else analyzes it and comes to a different conclusion.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I'm right across the board, but what I'm saying is, to me, it became update, 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 and it lacked any cohesive narrative to describe the decisions being made, which were draconian. They were massive. They were sweeping. They were limiting me in a way that I look around my sleepy little, nice little bedroom community I live in, and I'm like, he might as well have been saying, so the world's on fire and we're putting it out, but I'm looking outside my window and it's like blue skies and birds singing, and so there was this huge dissonance, this huge disconnect. And I began to say, hold on. I began to give credence to doctors who were not of the mainstream narrative. I began to say, maybe there's something here, the outside. And so that was sort of like, for me, like popping out of the matrix a little bit, right? Popping out of the narrative itself and going, okay, hold on. From that process to bring it to where I am now I find myself looking and saying, first of all, how could opening or closing, masks or no masks, have been turned so fast into a political thing? That's crazy to me. It's like, wait, now I'm a conservative Republican because I seriously, 6 months ago, I was a liberal. You know what I mean? It's like, and now apparently, I'm a Republican, and some of my friends, they're literally sending me private messages going, "You're not a Republican, don't worry," which I think is hilarious. They said, "You're a libertarian." I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. All I know is, if you're going to impose such huge things on a society, you've got to give us a story that explains it.
Right.
But so that's not the main thing. The main thing is, on this topic of bias is coming up in this moment, and how I thought I was sort of like at this place where I had nothing to prove and defend. I found myself digging in my beliefs and defenses and wanting to defend my choice to like Gavin Newsom, which I've gone 180. I don't trust him now, if I'm being honest.
Sure.
And bizarrely to me, the most weird thing is I find myself agreeing with things on face value that Trump says. So all my biases are getting tested, man. It's really a trip. Do you think that there's a huge potential spiritual lesson through all of this?
I think there's always a spiritual lesson.
Yeah. Okay. That's yeah. You're right.
You know, one of the things that I keep coming back to is you taking a stand for something doesn't require someone else being wrong.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
even in a spiritual conversation, and for those of you that don't know, I was in ministry for 13 years. That's why we kind of keep going back. Spirituality, I think, is that's a big part of where I come from, was being a pastor for over a decade.
And me, I mean, it's a big part of my lens and my schema for the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's always a rich conversation. We can just have these really open conversations where there's nothing to prove or protect.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that, again, we learned this idea of protect and prove and hide in religious conversation. And my way is right. My way is the only way. Yeah. And if my way is the only way, like, then you're either in or you're out. You're either with us or against us.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You're either going up or you're going down.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. In a very real way. In a very black and white sort of.
Exactly. And so we create a binary, but then the question is, okay, is it a true binary or is it a false binary? Is it a binary that we construct because it gives us more of an idea that doesn't necessarily feed a superiority, but again, feeds this desire or this need for us to belong and for us to exist for something outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think we carry that into politics, obviously. I mean, that's why, we have to go so far as to say there's a separation of church and state, right? And so I think we carry that idea of needing to be right.
Yeah.
And of needing to prove something.
Yeah.
I think the spiritual lesson that comes out of this is that, again, with beliefs are nothing more than a thought and a feeling that through experience you hold captive.
Yeah.
And which is fine. The problem is, especially with these kinds of ideologies and ideas about politics and ideas about conspiracy and ideas about whichever way you lean one way or another, is that racial tension, all of this. Problem is when you hold an idea so tight, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It doesn't matter. That's not exactly.
That's not the.
But you hold
that's not the influencing factor.
You hold it as true because it holds you for so long.
Yeah.
Right. That the problem is when it's challenged far too often, when you're holding it so tight, we turn that over and it becomes a weapon.
Yeah.
And so the question is then, can we then open that hand and look at our beliefs and say, okay, you know what? This is what I believe, but I'm open.
Yeah.
I'm open to not being right. That's okay.
Yeah.
But I need to believe this. This is what I believe. But you may be right as well, contextually. In accordance to your paradigm and your upbringing and your socioeconomic background and your racial profile and sexuality and all, you may be right.
Yeah.
And so now, because I'm not holding this with a closed fist, I can shake your hand. Right?
Yeah, that's such a.
And so I think that is the spiritual tie-in is, are we as at odds as media is trying to make us believe we are,
right?
Or are we all just fighting for the same thing, calling it something different and allowing ourselves to be divided?
Yeah.
Are we all trying to get to the town square, but we're fighting ourselves over traffic that we're creating, when in reality we can just get out of our cars?
Yeah. I remember when I was working in construction, and at that point in time, I would say it was safe to say I was more or less buying a certain party line with my beliefs, at least politically.
Sure.
You know, I would have said to you, I'm absolutely a liberal. I tend to like and trust Democrats better. In other words, I was in the notion that one side was right and one side was wrong, which in and of itself is to be cautious of, right?
Sure.
And I got a job with a guy who would wind up being very impactful in my life. In the very beginning, though, he was a fire and brimstone, ultra right wing, you know, like Christian conservative, and loud about it and aggressive about it. And I was just like, oh my God, how I'm never going to be able to work with this guy.
Yeah.
Right. And little by little over time, a few things started happening, which I found interesting in hindsight. One is I started getting a lot better at my craft very quickly because he was an artisan. He was a true artisan painter. Mm-hmm. He could just do the highest quality work I had ever seen, and that was something I aspired to.
Yeah.
And so even while I'm secretly hating this motherfucker, you know, I can't ignore the fact that because of him, my skill is going up and up and up and up and up. And then he's compensating me fairly for it, which is something in the trades that is not real common.
Sure.
You know,
oh,
I mean,
I worked in Oklahoma. Yeah. I worked construction all growing up.
Yeah. So, you know.
Oh yeah. Usually under the table. And
yeah.
Yeah.
And so while I thought our ideologies were unsolvably different, mm-hmm. he's doing these things. So first of all, he's making me better at my craft, which is something a mentor does, right? Yep. He's rewarding me for it fairly.
Yep.
And then every now and then he's saying things like, and this was huge to me back then, he would come and look at what I had done and say, that is really good work. Nobody does that in the trades, you know. They either don't criticize you or they do, right?
Sure.
And so I had this huge struggle going on. Like, I can't figure out what is going on with this guy. Well, ultimately, after he sort of let his defenses down and he stopped being so antagonistic about the political stuff, he wound up being for me a really important role model in my life, because even though he had these ideas that I thought were extreme and insane, he proved himself to be someone who would go out of his way to help another human being.
Yeah.
Without questioning where they were on the spectrum of politics, without questioning anything else. And as I slowly sort of revealed my life story to him and how it would naturally have led me to a polar opposite point of view of his, he acknowledged it. And you know what I mean? And so little by little, this guy undid all of my sort of rigid preconceptions about, in my mind, ultra right-wing Christian conservatives.
Sure.
Because there's no denying he was an incredibly decent human being, although flawed and although intense in his, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. And I think that at the end of the day, even the people who are putting masks on and calling you all kinds of names for not doing it, and even the people that are not putting masks on and screaming in the Walmart at people telling them to, I think there are more of us that would stop and help somebody fix a flat tire mm-hmm. than that wouldn't.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. And so
funny story, I did that yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah.
Maybe what I'm trying to get at here is a cry for sanity a little bit, a cry for reason, and a reminder that the things that would seemingly divide us truly are not as powerful as the things that unite us.
Sure. And I also think that we get caught up in a lot of sensationalism.
Yeah.
I think And there's a few different ways that we do that. I think that the internet, for all of the things that it's really great at, it's also great for creating an idea of revolution that doesn't exist. And when I was in youth ministry, I saw this a lot. Students would rally around an idea. 2012, it was this guy named CODY who was in Kenya, who was oppressing people, and so they were going to oust him. Right? So they had this big campaign. They didn't do anything.
Right.
But they all post on social media. So I think like they're these social activists. And like, and so you've got this huge echo chamber on the internet that, for all intents and purposes, especially with censorship now, can become an echo chamber to confirm your own biases, right? Like,
absolutely,
you can delete friends that disagree with you. You can create an environment where you are always right, and that's a very dangerous thing. It also creates a platform that hasn't been earned. So if you spin words eloquently, and if you have the right look or the right bravado or the right message at the right time, you can create an audience without really having ever put the work in to justify or legitimize your the words that you're speaking. So we've got that on top of, it's like when you go to a concert and you stand in the mosh pit. It doesn't matter whether you want to mosh or not. You're in the middle, so you're gonna do this. If everybody's jumping, you're gonna jump. If you're, if you're at a charismatic church and everybody's got their hands lifted, well, you are gonna lift your hands, even if it's your first time, because you don't want to feel like, everybody wants to feel like they're a part of something. And I think the same is true. You see these peaceful protests, which is fine. Protest peacefully. That's, your amendment, right? But when things start turning, it's this mob mentality of like, I've got to turn to, right, or else. And I think far more people would be exactly where you're saying, like somewhere in the middle, like of course this matters, but I think we can all agree this is complete horse shit. Right. This is important, but I think you're doing far more damage than good. Of course, I think this matters, but I also don't think it ever didn't. And I think this is far more political than you're making it out to be. And people are coming out of the woodwork saying shit that doesn't make any sense to create a narrative and an ideology and a confirmation bias. Because and now and you run the risk of sounding like you come against something that the church says, well, you're a heretic. You come against something that someone else says, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're all of these things for having an opinion. Either way, right? You're radical, right? It's the level, and not a high level, the low level of tolerance of others' opinions, of being able to create quality conversation that leads toward conflict resolution. I mean, you've got people who've perfected the art of saying absolutely nothing. It's like a modern worship song.
That is it's spot on. It's absolutely spot on. The media, I think. So you said something earlier about how tight we hold the belief versus the belief itself. The act of holding it so tight being the thing that needs to be examined, not the belief itself. And this is a subtle distinction that people miss. This is something that I talk about as confusing the windshield for the vista. Right. So I'm saying, oh my God, there's a bug on the windshield, and you're with me and you're going, what are you talking about? All I can see is trees and mountains. Right. And I was like, no, the windshield. And you keep looking through the windshield at the vista. It's that Stephen Covey called it, he referred to it as the ability to observe our own thinking. And I think that the media, not social media, I'm not sure people understand this as well as they should, but the media does not tell us what to think. This is a big distinction, and it's sort of akin to that. It's not the belief I have, it's how tight I'm holding it. But the media does, as per Cialdini and Persuasion, the media tells us what to think about, because they have all the stories and they choose which ones they put front and center, knowing that the human bias is to believe and give more value to what's right in front of you than to what's out of sight, out of mind. So in that way, the media props up narratives, but they don't prop up narratives in the way we commonly accuse them of, right? Which is, you're creating this narrative. Well, no, the narrative's already there.
Right.
I'm just telling you which part of it to focus on, which thing to think about. And then there's logic fallacies and there's some other stuff in the writing. And then social media.
Left and right news. This is where you get,
yeah,
this is different denominations in the church.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. We're all reading from the same book.
So
from based on how it's contextual, how you want to contextualize it a narrative. That's it.
Coming from your ministry background, all of this must look very surreal to you.
It's when you spend so much time doing so, and then you step out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how much it continues to inform.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I'm seeing.
On a larger scale, you start recognizing, like, if you guys knew, like, half the shit you guys are fighting about, like, is of no consequence. Like, you're literally fighting semantics.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're fighting an idea. And you're fighting not about the belief itself, because here's the interesting thing. Here's the interesting thing about, like, most of these beliefs that we're fighting for. Most of us carry the same set of beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is we've wrapped an ego around it. And so when you say it's not the belief itself, it's what's wrapped around it. When that ego is wrapped around a belief or an idea, that's where that protecting, hiding comes in.
Right. That's what the fist is.
That's what the fist is. The fist is doing
the ego.
Than trying to protect the framework of being right.
Yeah.
And again, the beauty of free will and the beauty of belief and of thought is the beauty of evolution, the beauty of continuously becoming, that a growth mindset would say that there is no quantifier to my human potential based on the right environment, the right people, the right influence, the right ideas, the right action at the right time. There's nothing that says that this is where I stop. And so the problem is for most people, when you have relationships or you have people their relationship is like a string. And if I continue to evolve, doesn't mean that I'm better than you. It just means that I continue questioning, continue growing. I give up the desire to be right, and I take on the desire to seek and to learn and to know.
Yeah.
But if you want to stay here and be right, that's fine. Yeah. The problem is we're going to create some tension on that line till eventually there's going to be a snapback effect that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing is so many people are so focused on being right.
Yeah.
Versus seeking to know. Yeah. Right. And to open. Mm-hmm. I mean, we find, I mean, we're both in the marketing space. Like, I work with people on a daily basis who are saying, yeah, but I thought it had to be this way. Yeah. Well, why? Why did you think it had to be that way? Right. Well, I mean, because everything says it does. Does everything say it needs to be? Or are the communities that you're a part of And are the people that you're following and the books that you're reading all confirming the suspicion that you have that that is the only way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, all these people that are really successful, cool. For those 10 people, I can show you 100 more that
Right.
that's not the path.
Yeah.
This is the path.
Yeah.
So who's right? Who's right? Or are they both right? The difference is they're not trying to prove anything other than this way is the pathway.
Right. We see that all the time. It's really interesting to me how direct the comparison is. You know, it's not
it's marketing. Now,
yeah.
There's marketing through Pathway to Paradise, right? There's marketing from an abundance mindset of what is possible, right? And that's where I camp out. That's where most camp out that are in my community, right? Like in the sense of not the community of like marketers or entrepreneurs or businessmen or women or executives. I'm saying my circle of friends.
Yeah.
We're all very, very what's possible, growth minded, you know, community over competition. But then you also have those who use fear mongering and scarcity tactics to bait people into living like, if you don't do this, then this.
Yeah.
And media does the same thing, right? Like what we're finding is like really, really brilliant marketing, just amazing marketing that you can really appreciate, but you have to see it for what it is.
Yeah.
It's marketing towards all your greatest fears, confirming them as if they're already true. So we're creating a future pacing.
Yep.
So that you'll walk out the narrative that's being played before you based on the preconceived ideologies that are being confirmed in real time to a bias.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Exactly. So, are you optimistic in the long run?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah. The humanity, I think, over time has always corrected itself towards what is good. And I think that we're in a, and we've seen throughout history that there are obviously seasons of growing pains.
Yeah.
And do I think that there are deeper things at play here? Yes. Do I think that we are in a real spiritual contention? Yeah. That's not a pastoral, you can feel it. Like you feel that this is a far more, just in the way it's politicized, in the way that people are talking about things, this is a spiritual contention.
Yeah.
And again, is there a right or wrong? I'm still trying to feel that out.
Same here.
I definitely know that there is a light and there is a dark.
Yeah.
I definitely know that there is an abundance and there is a scarcity. I definitely see that. And what I know is that darkness can exist where there's light.
Yeah.
I do know that light comes to overthrow the darkness and to cast out darkness. That's what light is. And is nothing more than the absence of light. And so I do think that the human spirit, the human condition, the willingness of man to, at his nature, love others, I think that we will see. I'm always hopeful and optimistic of that. And I'm very careful of, again, they say that a man without purpose is a ship without a rudder. And I think we have a lot of people who have lived a fairly entitled life.
Yeah.
And have lived a life that has not had to seek any hardship overcome, not really. And at least not quantifiably that it builds true character. Because if it built true character, then we would recognize man's deep desire towards that fulfilling purpose, which is to overcome adversity, trial, right, hardship. And so we would see this season as an opportunity for man to push towards a greater purpose and reconciliation. And so I think we're just seeing some real growing pains of a generation that is very entitled, a generation that doesn't know what it is to do hard things, that doesn't that doesn't even know how to fight in a way that brings about real change. If you have a belief, if you have something you feel is injustice, great. But there is a way and a methodology in which
yeah,
you out these things. And so I think we're just seeing some real growing pains, and we're seeing our arrogance on full display. We're seeing our entitlement on full display. We're seeing our apathy on full display.
yeah.
And I think that's going to cause a correction. But I'm absolutely optimistic.
I agree with all of that, part and parcel. And there's no but coming. Like, I think you really nailed it. What I think social media has inadvertently done, and I deliberately choose the word inadvertently because I can't imagine anyone could have predicted or strategized it ahead of time, is this is a generation who doesn't know struggle in the way that previous generations know it. And character is forged in the gauntlet of adversity. There's just no way around that.
Yeah.
You know, on the one hand, I don't wish a shitstorm on anyone.
Sure.
But on the other hand, maybe, you know, like,
right.
I as I imagine you do, I come from a time and a place where if you pop off with something stupid, you can get punched in the mouth.
100%. Yeah.
No joke, right? You can get your ass stomped.
Yeah.
Depending on how bad the thing you say or do is.
100%.
And a little bit, particularly where I was raised, you don't have to say anything bad for that to happen. It can just happen. And I know that it's still somewhat prevalent today, but you've got less of it, and you've got more people with unearned strong opinions who can now reach a global audience,
sure,
for better or for worse. And so I think so social media has brought us so much that's good, right? I mean, I prefer working on social media to painting houses 10 out of 10 times.
Sure.
You know, sure. I prefer working with people and seeing the change and the connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, you know, if you are genuinely marginalized, but I think for the purposes of this conversation, self-marginalized, you know, you can now sort of lash out at the world at large.
Right. And again, because of this idea of the echo chamber, that becomes affirmed.
Yeah.
It's the ego. Mm-hmm. You feel right. You feel justified. You have no intention or desire to seek another's point of view, because you've already been confirmed, you know, by 50 people liking your status.
Right.
So I'm obviously right. And, you know, with that many engagements.
Yeah. Right.
So there's that piece to it.
Yeah. There's none of that
addiction to dopamine in being right.
Yeah.
And that's another. So even with social media, again, I didn't grow up with a computer. I didn't grow up with anything like that. And dopamine came when you finished a job. Dopamine when you completed something.
Yeah.
When you did something hard and you overcame it. Now there's such an instant grab. I mean, there was no Amazon. You didn't order something and sometimes get it the same damn day. Like you ordered something off Boy's Life magazine and you're lucky if it showed up in a month.
Yeah.
And there's this instant gratification, this instant dopamine hit that again, like it does nothing but dissolve character.
Yeah. Well said. I think when you have to run with the tribe, with the herd, it automatically creates little course corrections and little feedback signals that sort of are on balance more good than bad.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah. You can't Amazon Prime integrity.
Yeah. Well, when you can, let me know, because I'm going all in on Amazon stock that day. That would really help, Bezos. If you could get on that, that'd be great, man.
Bezos, they're saying in the next 6 years, going to be the first trillionaire.
Yeah, it's wild.
So, like, that's some fuck you money right there.
Yeah, that is. What I wanted to say earlier was I heard Alex Sharfin say all successful societies trend toward real democracy. And humanity trends constantly toward real democracy, not political democracy, but what democracy really means. And that's when I asked you if you were optimistic. I'm still optimistic too. You know, I don't remember ever getting the poison out. I don't remember ever popping a pimple without a little bit of discomfort first. And
Sure.
I think that every significant, like really humanity follows a very similar line to the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really fascinating.
When you, on the way to any destination worth going,
Yeah.
kid, my kids, there's a book called Going on a Bear Hunt. It's a song as well. And the whole idea behind the song is like, we're going on it's a song that I'm not going to sing, but we're going on
You almost sang it.
from me. But we're going on a bear hunt. And the idea is like there's some obstacle. And so you can't go around it. You can't go over it. You can't go under it.
Right.
You have to go through it. And we're just going through it right now. Right. I mean, but anything worth having, marriage, you got to go through. You got to go through it. Like it's not a cakewalk. Building a successful business, building a strong body. Like,
yeah,
just wake up and look like this. I've got to put work in. I can't eat shit. Like I got to water.
Yeah.
Being covered in, like, I love the artwork on my body. I am covered with tattoos. Painful to get here.
Yeah.
Right. Like anything worth having is going to cause some sort of pain.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be immediate. It can't be.
Right. Yeah. We would all do well to sort of just, what's that?
It's going to cost you something.
Yeah. We would all do well to get rid of that notion.
Sure.
Really, just to pull it out by the root. I think, again, it was Stephen Covey where I first heard that, you know, humans move toward greater and greater interconnectedness and greater interdependence.
Sure.
I've noticed and observed that creativity in general is the same way. What I find fascinating is that human beings are, in a very, very real way, the most sophisticated expression of creativity that we know about in the universe.
Yeah.
Now, the universe started with 3 elements, right? If you're going to go Big Bang, the universe started out with 3 elements, shooting outward, colliding with each other, and creating what? More and more interdependence and interconnectedness and complexity. And so when I think of us as just an expression of creativity, which is what we are, right? Yeah. It's more complex cell, organism, blah, 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 on and on and on, then I'm heartened that what we're seeing now is it's uncomfortable and it brings people's fears up and all of those things, but really it's just that merge toward the next phase of interconnectedness, sophistication and interdependence with one another.
Yeah, you know, when I was in ministry, we used a word called liturgy. So the liturgy of service. Yeah. And liturgy simply just means work of the people. So there was I would travel and speak, and there was a very particular talk or sermon or presentation that I would give to churches and conferences, and it was called the Liturgy of Interdependence.
Yeah.
The framework around it was this idea that in spirituality, through the work of the cross, there is this personal autonomy. There is this idea of personal salvation. Yeah. That I am responsible for my own salvation through the finished work of Christ. I mean, that was again, that's the Judeo-Christian way of reading sacred text and approaching spirituality and spiritual truth. But then there's a flip side to that I like, where we would differ from some spiritual practices and some religions is that we don't believe as a man an island unto himself, right? Which is a Buddhist philosophy that we are actually interconnected and we are part of a larger, more conscious collective that we lovingly call the capital C Church. So there's this interdependence of personal autonomy and personal sovereignty and personal relationship that I'm responsible to nurture. But then I'm also responsible for the collective of the capital C Church. And so I am now responsible for being a part of a community, and I'm responsible for shepherding and taking care and seeking to make sure that the widows and the orphans and that everyone in the community is taken care of as I'm taken care of.
Yeah.
And I think that we had that. And I think social media has confused, I just think being online in general has confused a lot of what that means.
Yeah.
I think, it became increasingly harder and harder and harder to sit down and have conversations with teenagers when I was a youth pastor. They would rather text me, right, and have the conversation that way. And so there was this idea that, another thing that I would talk on, this idea that we are, for the first time in history, we are together alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe what's going to happen is that we're going to have to find our way back into what it looks like to do life together outside of the idea and the avatar of who we portray ourselves to be, because so many are so busy trying to convince everybody who doesn't fucking care because they're too busy trying to convince everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Like, of who they are and what they have in this like weird avatar. Like it's a simulation. It's a video game.
It's
like,
a simulation. Yeah.
An identity that doesn't exist. And so the problem is we don't even know how to fucking behave in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's so true. I think with that, I'm gonna just pull the plug on people. Cody, I got to tell you, man, we throw around terms, and I usually resent these terms. We throw around terms like "I appreciate you." We say those out of context. We tell people that we don't know well enough that we love them. It's all part of the social media communication language. I'm not going to insult you by saying either of those things, but I am going to tell you sincerely from the bottom of my heart, it is really, really meaningful for me to connect with you. These two conversations have been wonderful for me. I love what you're about. I love what you're about. I love your work.
Likewise. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I will say it is truly like, because time it's the most valuable thing that we have.
Yeah.
I'm truly like honored to be able to just share this exchange. Again, had it not been great the first time, we wouldn't have danced a second time.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, right. Absolutely, man.
So yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time twice. I really appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing. That's all I got for you, man.
You too, brother.
All right, brother.